You're welcome back to The Pulse here on the Joy News channel on Multi TV. Now, little is said about the contribution of academia to the growth and development of the country, but it's time we look at it now. He's well known for his works in linguistics, media, and even state investigations. There's every chance you may have read his column in newspapers including The Mirror and The Catholic Standard, which earned him honor by the Ghana Journalists Association for writing the longest-running column in the history of Ghanaian journalism. He was a member of the WACO Commission appointed by the President J. Ekufuor to investigate the Yendi chieftaincy crisis in the year 2002. Today, his words are heavy on future leaders and the improvement of education in Ghana. Vice Chancellor of the Central University, Professor Kwesi Yankah, is my guest today on The Pulse. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
And recently, let's start off with what has been the most topical, the three-year, four-year pendulum you've been talking about for our senior higher school education. My first question is this: what's wrong with the system now? Why should we look at a pendulum even in the first place?
Lots is wrong with the system, in the sense that if you like, you can look at the system as it operates now, the outcomes of the system since it started in 2009 and even before then, and you compare it with the other system which this system came to replace. Let me say that the 3-year, 4-year systems have been a bone of contention from the time that the original 3-year system was replaced by the Ekufuor government when they came to power and set up the Anamoah Mensah Commission in 2002.
Yes.
That commission itself recommended a 3-year SHS in accordance with what was there before. As far as the commission was concerned, there was no need to change it. But when they presented their report, the Ekufuor government, in a white paper that they produced to support or accompany the commission's report, rather went for a 4-year policy. So the white paper is actually the policy, not the commission's report.
Okay.
So that was started, set in motion right from 2007 at the time. 2 years or so after they set the 4-year in motion, the Ekufuor party lost power and what was replaced by the Mills government. And apparently in the manifesto of the party to which Mills belongs, they had promised
a reversion to the 3-year.
Yes, a reversal to the 3-year. So as soon as they came to the forum where stakeholders presented their views, and then they decided that the outcome of the forum was for a 3-year. So they reversed it. So those who started the 4-year policy had just finished the first year. They hadn't even finished the second year and the third year and the fourth year for you to determine whether the outcome was successful or not. And it was abrogated. But they were asked to continue. That stream
4-year cycle.
Yes, they could continue. But meanwhile, let's start the 3-year. So the 3-year also started until both streams did 2013, clashed, and did the 2013 exam together. So it gave you the opportunity to also compare. But even before the 2013 outcome, you could still do a comparison of the outcomes between the 3-year and the 4-year policies. And this is what I try to understand why, for the flip-flop, it gives the impression of a lack of confidence in our own sense of policy formulation. We don't even believe in our policies. And then from outside, it gives the impression of uncertainty on our part, flipping from here and from there. And so I decided to take a closer look at the two policies, particularly the outcomes, and see where we are. Are we talking about one being better than the other, or are we talking about one producing more acceptable outcomes than the other? And that is what I try to
Before we deal with what you wrote in the paper you've written on this matter. Let's draw the boundaries here and now. Is it your understanding that a 3-year system or the 4-year system is better? Which is better for us?
I think it's clear from the outcomes that the 3-year system has put a majority of senior high schools under considerable pressure. And I'm talking about the majority, which are mostly the public schools, almost throughout the country, except a handful that you may call the better endowed schools, those that receive a considerable chunk of very, very good students coming from the GHS system, directly flowing into those schools, and better endowed in so many senses, in the sense of quality of teachers, quality of infrastructure, and so on and so forth. They appear not to have been adversely affected as to whether it's 3-year or 4-year. They are still moving on, and they are producing some of the best results. But for a majority of high schools or secondary schools throughout the country, and I'm looking at more than 700 of these throughout the country, in all the 10 regions, it has been considerable strain on the students, on staff, and on the entire school.
What is it down to? The curriculum being too big within a period, or what?
Look, if you say a 3-year system, in practical terms, what are you talking about?
2.5, really.
You're talking about 2.5, because if you talk about the beginning of the semester or term, it's not just September, because you have the CSSP, which is the computer selection system by which the candidates, the graduates are allocated to various schools and so on and so forth. Parents and teachers and students spend a considerable amount of time, and it's mostly the lesser endowed schools that suffer, because the high flyers are immediately placed and they go to school. But where you come from and where I come from and where many people come from, they don't get their first choices. So they have to move to their second choices and third choices. They have to be moved from one place to the other, one school to the other. By the time they succeed in getting a school, it's November, sometimes it's December. A greater part of that semester is already gone. So for many of the schools, the actual SHS to them begins in the second year. It is in the second year that they have a full term. Now, within the third year, don't forget that we are talking of May-June exams. In actual fact, May-June exams begin in February.
Which means they do 2 terms out of 3
yes.
in their final year.
Exactly. And they start in February, and then they follow through to May, when the entire cycle of exams would end. So they are shortchanged, and they have 2.5 years instead of 3 years. And you can tell this from the examiners' reports that I've closely studied, clearly indicating that the students don't appear to have had much time
to go through
the
but again,
entire syllabus.
In the brief analysis you've done of the problem, if it's about the students getting in late, too much time wasted within the first year in getting these students placed, why don't we fix that problem so they get a full 3 years?
It's just one factor. It's only one factor.
One of how many?
Oh, yeah, there are so many factors. Just not enough contact hours. Even if we decided to eliminate the CSSP and decided that they would work directly from the final exam to September, where they will start the classes, they do not just have enough time. Don't forget that many of the students here, particularly I'm talking about the majority, leave out for now the better endowed ones that everybody knows. Many of them are fed by junior high schools that are not as well endowed. And you know the outcome of the BC results, it's very, very poor in several parts of Ghana.
And I like how you've switched the conversation to,
yes.
sir, because thing is this, if we're getting students who are coming from the junior high school who are not doing too well, majority of them
yes.
are not doing too well, why don't we fix the base?
That is fine.
Before we look at the top.
Exactly. Yes, you fix the base. Depends on how much time you think you will need to fix the base and whether we are actually fixing the base as we are speaking now. But as it were, many of the products from the BC are not, according to the teachers I've been talking to, maybe are not strong enough. They did not qualify with high enough aggregates, let me put it that way, to be able to swim smoothly through the SSS system. So many of the schools spend a considerable amount of time with these students within the first year. The first year is largely remedial to many of them, trying to get the less advantaged ones to catch up with the better endowed ones until the second year itself, making sure that at least they have reached a level where you think they are reasonably at par. Not entirely, they can never be at par. And then you can now start teaching the syllabus. So already 1 year is gone because the first year was revisionary or remedial in character, as it were. And largely also the first year is used to ensure that the students now can determine where their strengths are
and where they can fit.
And where they can fit in the second year, whether science or
so just humanities. So we can get through. Your argument is that even though certain reports in the past have shown that 3 years should be the best for us, looking at the kind of time these students have, the 4 will be a good option.
Clearly, from the evidence that we have. But I'm not saying that time and the duration is the only factor. It's one out of several factors.
Okay, so for the work you've done and for the 34-page presentation that you've put together, what are some of the details that we can interrogate right now?
I think we can simply look at the charts, the outcomes of the results of the SHS results, taking to begin with the core subjects.
Okay, then let's go through the core subjects now.
Let's, I don't know whether the team is ready to present English language core.
English is on the screens right now.
Core English. Now you look at this chart from 2006 to 2015, about roughly 9-10 years. 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009 are the years that the 3-year students produced the results. 2011, 2012 are the years that the 4 years took over from there. 2013 is the year when the 2 streams combined and sat. 2014, 2015 are the years that the 3 years alone sat for the exams, and the outcomes are quite interesting here. What you see before you, 2006 they got 32%. That is dealing with A1 to C6 passes.
That's the passes.
These are the passes that you require to enter many tertiary institutions. 2007 became 27.2, 2008 49.1, 2009 43.56. There was no exam in 2010 for one reason or the other that we could go into. But in 2011, when the 4 years returned or came, it jumped from 43.56% in the previous exam to 75.90. The second year, when the 4 year was still on, it was 66.90. 2013, when the 2 of them sat, the 2 streams sat, it was 65.70, still reasonably high. When 2014, they went back to the 3 year, the outcome is clear, 45.2 and then 50.29. It's quite clear here that there's a sharp drop in the performance
in the figures.
In respect of English. And English is important because what is going to carry the student through whether humanities or sciences, it is English that they need.
Okay, I get that. What's the source of this information, sir?
Exams Council.
Exams Council.
Yes. Not the chart, but the raw material.
The raw scores.
Yes.
Okay, even looking at the chart, sir, and just to look at this from both views, some would say if the performance rises and falls, it's not constant. There's this upward adjustment and then it comes back down. Never mind, the gaps may be bigger.
Sure.
Is it not also because every single year the approach in teaching these students and the understanding of the issues changes year on year, considering people's IQs levels?
I have said that it is not just one factor. that one ought to consider. It's not simply duration, and just extend the duration and fold your arms. Quite a number of factors would go into this.
Okay. So beyond the English...
But I'm talking about the trend.
The trend.
Yes.
Okay.
The second one we can easily consider is the integrated science. You know, where if the chart is clear on the screens, you can tell that from 2006 to 2009, when we had a 3-year sitting for the exams, you see the range right from 23.62 to 34.26. Now, in 2011, when the 4-year group comes on board, it jumps from 34.26% to 42%. And then in 2012, 55.30. Look at 2014, 2015, when the 3 years exclusively do the exams, it falls sharply from the 55.3 in 2012 to 23.63%, and then further down to 9.10. If you look at the chart, integrated science, 9.10 is probably the worst outcome over the 10-year period that you see before.
That we've seen, exactly. Okay, so that's for integrated science. Another core subject on the analysis that's been done by Professor Kwesi Yanka on this matter of the 3-year, 4-year senior high school pendulum, where we should be switching it to, whether we should still go back to the 4 or maintain a 3. So we've seen English, integrated science, both are core subjects, and I guess the trend is clear that indeed something has to be done about it. Can we now look at some of the elective subjects?
Yes.
Then we can look at it in a more bigger context.
Yes.
We know of mathematics is clearly a challenge we've always been speaking about. Let's look at the elective mathematics. That's an area in the preserve for the business science students as well.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes. Elective math, I think that the trend is the same. From 2006 to 2009, they average in the 30s. When you move to 2011, 2012, where the 4 years come in, clearly there's a jump. 66.7% and 75.10% in 2011, 2012. And then
in 2012, we saw an increase.
Yes, a big jump from the previous year and from the 3-year period. And when you move down again to the 2014 and 2015, once again it comes down during the 3-year period. It's the same pattern with elective. And this is very important because these are the subjects that one needs to pass and pass well in order to get into engineering and the related subjects in the scientific disciplines. These are the core areas that you need to ensure that your students are conversant with.
But again, you also know that for elective mathematics, and you mentioned that it's for a certain specific group of people who are looking into engineering and other areas that are mathematics dominated. This is an area where many have argued over the years. The Mathematics Society have also argued that it's an area that's difficult for many of the students from even the basic level. So are we not only mirroring the challenge growing bigger as we climb up the educational ladder?
We are talking only in relative terms here. The factors that you raise are very, very relevant, even the way mathematics is taught. We are only dealing with the relativities, assuming that all these challenges persist across the years. Where have the challenges persisted the most? And this is where we say that the duration thing is a factor here. Now you can easily move from here to biology elective.
Still in the science area.
In the sciences. You realize that in the biology, the differences are really not much as pronounced as we found in the others. There's considerable, effort made among the 3-year, in the 2014-2015 academic years. But the fact still remains that 2011 and the 2012, the students have performed much, very, very creditably. If you look at the average output, you realize that the average output between the 2011 and 2012 is much higher than the average output for the 3 years across all the years that the exams have been sat in biology elective.
Okay.
But here you realize that there's considerable strength in the biology elective, even in the 3-year, I must clearly admit that.
Okay, okay.
The difference is there, but not as clear
As the other
as
core
maybe,
subjects that
yes.
we've seen in the past.
Yes.
So clearly, the picture you've painted is that considering the 3 years and the 4 years and all the other factors inclusive, a lot more time you have, plus the other factors of teaching, would see better results if we put our minds to it.
Plus other factors.
Other
as
factors.
you mentioned.
Let's discuss those other factors you speak of beyond the time. What are the other factors that are
Oh,
challenging our progress now?
Clearly, we have talked about the structural factors in terms of the actual time that they have on their hands. We are talking about quality of facilities that they have, teacher motivation, quality of the science lab and kind of equipment that they use, as well as the quality of the students that they get from the EHS. These are very, very important factors that are relevant here. And we keep pointing out that so long as you have that social disparity within the country between the haves and the have-nots, between the quality of schools you have in the rural areas, for example, and those you have in many of the urban areas, that is going to last for a considerable while unless we make an extra effort to ensure that we lift up the standard of schools right from the primary through the GHS before they even come to the SHS.
Okay, then it begs the question, sir. Should we be looking at expanding access or improving quality?
Both. I don't think it's one to the exclusion of the other. Expanding access, not at the expense of quality, but it looks like most of the time we move in one direction and leave the other behind.
How do we balance the two? Because in the past, and the track records show that we've concentrated more on one than the other every time.
I think we should just consider education as fundamental to the development and economic growth of any country, and spend as much as the budget can afford on education. It is the percentage, the budget that we have for education that I think have to take a critical look at, plus ensuring that the human resource factor, the quality of teachers that we produce to teach the children right from kindergarten through primary, through GHS and SHS, that is a major area that we need to take a look at.
And this issue has been on the table for a very long time,
Yes.
sir. For even more than 10 years, even 15 years now. Many have been asking questions about the quality of education in this country. What is it down to? Lack of political will to make our systems change and become better?
I think we have allowed politics to intrude too much into this. I mean, look at this issue that I've been dealing with, and the actual source of this pendulum I'm talking about. It looks like every government or party has a certain perception of owning a policy, which ought to be different from the other policy. So when you come to power or your party comes to power, it is your party which from time immemorial has been pursuing the 3-year policy. And you are therefore obliged to ensure that that policy is restored at any opportunity that you get. Look at the example that we gave about this 3-year policy. At the time that the 4-year was interrupted, there was no need actually for the interruption, because there was no hard evidence on the ground to demonstrate that the 4-year was inferior. The argument that was raised at the time was the 4-year is rather expensive. But look at what happens in reality. If it's going to be expensive on the parent, how about the 3-year where your ward one is repeatedly within the SHS, because many of the SHS repeat students if they are not doing well. And after being repeated and doing the SHS exam, the WASSCE exam, there's no guarantee that you are going to pass in the first attempt. Some repeat twice and 3 times before they really get into the university. At the end of the day, you have spent about 6 years instead of the 3 years, which is much more expensive on the parent. You know, if you looked at the 4-year and after the 4 years, you stand a much better chance of going into the tertiary education. Wouldn't you rather go for that rather than the 3-year on paper, but which in actual fact is 6 years?
Okay.
or more.
Okay. So once that argument holds, sir, then I need to ask, is that why we are seeing a lot more graduates who come out of the universities unable to get jobs? Because if the quality is compromised from the senior high school level, it translates also at the higher level,
It
sir.
certainly is a factor. And a much clearer factor is one having to do with even admissions in the tertiary institutions. You realize are falling right from the public schools, public universities to the private universities.
What's your personal experience? You're the Vice Chancellor of the Central
Oh,
University.
clearly, I'm talking on behalf of private universities because I'm also with the private universities, and there is a decline, a quiet decline, both within the public and the private universities, and there are so many factors, of course, but
What are some
a
of
very
them?
very important factor. One of the factors has to do with just there are too many universities around, both foreign and local, and the competition is so keen. So people are just grabbing various fragments of what they can get.
Isn't it also because the access to the public universities is very restricted? A lot of the people are left unable to go to these universities.
Yeah, but I'm saying that even with the public ones, the admissions are declining. It clearly means that most likely, I haven't looked at the total picture, but the decline in passing that we find with the 3-year could directly affect the number of students who would normally qualify with good grades to enter the universities. That's likely to be affected by that.
Okay. So, in as much as we are lamenting over the problem, how do we fix it?
Well, my proposal and recommendation, one is to remove the politics out of it.
How do we do it?
Deal with the factors. Deal with the evidence that is being produced. The kind of evidence that I've sought to provide through this particular study. You realize that a majority of the schools are suffering under the 3-year system. There is, on the other hand, a small number where, regardless of 3 years or 4 years, they are doing quite well. So, if it's not, why do you fix it if there's nothing to fix with them? My suggestion and argument is that one of the reasons that we are failing with education policies is the one-size-fits-all policy that we have been producing. I'm bringing a policy of 3 years for everybody. I'm bringing a policy of 4 years for everybody. The 4 years, of course, is more inclusive because if you have the 4, you also have the 3 within. The 3 years is not that inclusive because if you have the 3, you know, the 4 is not part of it, and so on and so forth. The suggestion then is to forget about this politicized, polarized kind of one-size-fits-all policy and look at the social disparities that are so pronounced in the society and come out with a policy where you have a largely fundamental 4-year policy, but within it, you make it flexible enough to ensure that those who can do it in 3 years can go ahead and do it in 3 years.
Okay, and some will say if that argument holds true, then it will mean if somebody's doing a 4-year course, and like they did in the past, even for the 3 years, if you go through second year for the 3 years and you realize that you can write the exam, you can go right and off deck the private exam
That's what I'm saying.
and get it.
That's exactly.
Is that what we should do now?
Not well. I am just making a proposal for flexibility. Period. There are various ways by which the flexibilities can be achieved. You can talk of school-based, institution-based flexibility. That is, this school A deciding that we'll go for 3 year, we'll go for 4 year. That has advantages, but also lots of disadvantages. Or decide on the basis of the outcome of the BCE that this particular candidate has such strong grades at the BCE that we think he'll be quite comfortable with the 3 year. But I think a better way out is to equip all the schools with a 4-year capacity. And within every school, make room for 3 years. They're high flyers. In our days, common entrance, you could do common entrance in Form 2, Form 1, sometimes even P6. Some came to the common entrance to go to the secondary school in Standard 7 at the far extreme end. And they were adults and big boys and girls.
And they could do it?
They could do it.
Okay, all right.
So you allow this flexibility, and then, but equip all the schools with a 4-year capacity, and then allow that flexibility of 3-year to be arranged within every school.
All right. At this point, we'll go for a break here on the show. We're speaking to the Vice Chancellor of the Central University, Professor Kwesi Yankah, telling us why we should be considering another look at our senior high school education and the number of years we're spending, and come up with a new policy. We'll find out after the break why this policy should be adopted or not, and who should take up that charge. Details and more after the break. Stay with us. You're welcome back to The Pulse, and if you're just joining us, our special guest today is the Vice Chancellor of the Central University, Professor Kwesi Yankah, sharing with us his paper he's written about a critical look at our senior high school education and where we should be threading it towards, 3 years or 4 years. He's put together a paper that suggests that based on the statistics available, we might want to consider strongly the 4-year option, so we see the quality churned out proper for our job market and also for the general well-being and development of the country. Mr. Yankah, fine proposal you've put together. Why have we not adopted it policy-wise?
My power ends within the realm in which I operate. I have presented the paper. It is for the policymakers.
Who did you present it to?
This was on the platform of the Academy of Arts and Sciences. Originally, it was meant for the West African Examination Council, which commissioned me, and I chose this particular topic. But I think there was some misunderstanding at the 11th
What was their worry?
They would better explain it. But I think the letter that they sent to me, they said it's an election year, and they wouldn't want to be caught on the wrong foot or misinterpreted as being overly political.
Okay.
So at the 11th hour, they abandoned me in the cold, which was quite embarrassing. But I picked up courage and went to the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, where I'm a fellow. And they were so happy and enthusiastic that to host it. So I do hope that once this has been projected and presented, and that doesn't contain bombs, that these are very constructive suggestions, maybe the Ministry of Education can put together a technical committee to look at it. These are very constructive suggestions of coming back to the 4 years, but tagging the 3-year along for high flyers. It's a win-win situation. It's not.
But you do understand why this may be looked at with a very political lens, because in the first place, the 3-4 year card had been played politically between two parties. So do you get your point also about why do you put this on ice?
And I think that is the problem with this country. We politicize education overly, and we end up victimizing the innocent children. 2 elephants fighting, the grass is suffering. And that, look, go to some of the secondary schools. Because of this, the stress that results from the 3-year system, some of them go to classes at 4:30 a.m., 5 a.m. You have your 14-year-old girl in secondary school, and it tells you, I wake up at 3 a.m., get ready for class at 4:30 a.m. You weep as a parent. We can live this stress, but not deal with the duration alone. I keep saying this. It's just one single factor. So I do hope that for once they will take a critical look at this and remove the politics out of it, and then get some consensus or some inter-party consensus at the parliamentary level, because there's a subcommittee on education. They can look at it critically and advise government. There's the NCTE, National Council for Tertiary Education, can look at this. And I'm going to make this available to all of them. Hey, take a look at it. Find at least there's evidence. You can study it and even negate the point I'm making. That's fine.
Okay, since you presented this, have you been painted with a political brush, partisan?
I haven't heard this. I haven't heard this, but I have heard one particular party saying that if it is 4 years, just say 4 years and reverse the 3 year, which is bogus. It's a suggestion somebody is making because they think there's clear evidence of 4 years. I said, beautiful. What I'm also saying is that, yes, swing to 4 years, but don't leave out the minority that are high flyers and are comfortable with the 3 years. Take them along and then find a place for them within every institution. Allow the flexibility that we had in this several years ago with the common entrance exams, where high flyers were allowed. Even in those days, people were jumped from class 1 to class 3. People were jumped from class 1 to class 3. Why don't you equally leave that available for those who are sharp and can do it at 3 years?
In doing my research for this interview today, sir, there was something that came about the quality of politicians in Ghana today based on the educational background that they have. What's your position on that? I read a paper that you wrote on it.
My quality of politicians?
Yes.
Oh my God. This is a very, it's a real problem. I don't determine quality by how many degrees that you have. I don't think that. Otherwise, you have the entire parliament and executive full of PhD holders, and I don't really believe in that. From the research that I did in the past, I see a considerable increase in the percentage of PhDs and professionals within Parliament, and a gradual decline right from CPP days, gradual decline of Standard 7 holders and illiterate. But I wouldn't even, I think, look, we should be realistic about the society in which we live. A diversity of representation is what I think we need. As for what becomes, how do you define quality in terms of political output? I still believe in the diversity.
Are we getting that today? Do we see a fine mix in our political leaders today?
Yes, I said that I'm not sure Parliament has enough time to think through issues and debate them critically. I think most of the time they appear to be brushing through bills. Some of the bills may be predetermined.
Predetermined?
Well, not in the sense that you have a majority in Parliament that can just decide to walk through. And I'm sure we haven't done a critical study of the pattern of voting. But you can rest assured that you have 99% of this particular party voting for a bill because it is a bill that has been brought by government. And they have to show their solidarity and loyalty to that particular.
But again, in the past, even if the same argument holds, you had a minority that was quite vocal and based on research to do these things.
This is what I'm really looking for. Majority, a few people, and I think there have been quite a number of, not enough, though a few instances where members of the majority have a minority within the majority. They have come up to say that objecting or coming along with a minority in determining the outcome of a bill. We need many more of such than we do now. I think we are too sycophantic as a country, and that has nothing to do with quality. It has to do with the nature of the system. A winner takes all situation. If I don't take care and I don't vote for this particular bill, I'm going to be blacklisted within my party and I'm going to lose all the privileges. And if I'm in the minority, they are telling me I should wait till it's my turn before my viewpoint is amplified or heard.
Okay, so has that over the years, in your view, reduced the level of scrutiny and debate we see in Parliament?
I watch other parliaments, whether on the screen or elsewhere, and I would look forward to a much more intense debate based on time enough on their hands to do critical reading and understanding of budgets, of bills that are presented. I think we are losing the bite of Parliament. the outcome is very much obvious most of the time, and you know what they are going to say. And that the two merge, the two minority and majority merge on very, very few issues, sometimes having to do even with their own welfare. And I want to see that translate into critical assessment of issues regardless of party colors.
Okay. And you think it's purely because of the partisan colors that the quality has reduced? Just because of that?
Not, well, there are so many, as I keep saying, just, I think it's one of the factors.
That's the main one?
Yes.
And then the rest is what? People are not reading enough?
I don't know whether our parliamentarians are given enough time and are given enough resources in terms of research assistants and even office space, for them to determine that this is my job, this is my profession, and that I need to read critically, I need to get assistants to do enough research for me to advance a particular viewpoint. We need to resource them for them to understand that this is their main profession. That's where they...
Okay. Let's quickly return to education. But while we do that, I remember recently you were able to present a lecture and it was told at the last minute. There was a lot of rancor about it. What was that about?
That's what we talked about.
The paper you were supposed to present, that
this paper that
was put up at the last minute.
This is what I'm presenting here. Very, very innocuous, benign, constructive analysis, scientific. That's why we were talking about the body that originally commissioned this may have felt a little uneasy, but they gave me all the data. Every data that I'm presenting here, including one very, very delicate data, which hasn't gone to many people. The 2013, where both the 3-year and 4-year sat, nowhere can you get data on that. Everybody's lips are sealed.
Are sealed on that matter.
Because they think it's going to reveal something delicate. There's nothing delicate about education, about policy, and you can clearly say that this is what I've presented here. Okay. Very innocuous.
Once you mentioned WAEC and education, let's talk a bit about the examinations we've seen recently. There was a recent issue of WASSCE exams, the constant year-on-year leakage of papers. Why do you think we're seeing more of this in our education today?
It's part of the paper I presented. We didn't have enough time to present this year. But there's a clear correlation. I've looked at data of examination malpractices right from 2006, when WASSCE started, to 2015. And there's a clear correlation between the 3-year period when the exam malpractices appear to have swung upwards, and the 4-year period. And don't forget that exam malpractices arise, and once again, one of the factors, not all, in situations where there is stress. Your son or daughter is going to take an exam, he's not well prepared, there have not been enough contact hours, and so on and so forth. Whatever it takes for you to help this ward to pass the exam, you are likely to do so. Exam malpractices, from the data I have, and if they have already showed the chart.
It's already up, yes.
There's a clear correlation between the two, much, much lower when the 4 years did the exam. And apart from that, from the data that I have also, exam malpractices are much more predominant in the lesser endowed schools. The percentage of students involved in exam malpractices, that percentage is much, much less in the better endowed schools. They are much more relaxed. The stress and the strain involved in going for exams are completely minimized.
Okay.
And so it tells you that if you have the 3-year tagged along, the better endowed, tagged along the 4-year, where you have a majority of the students doing the 4-year, you have both of them taking the exams under much less stress, and which is likely to reduce examination malpractice.
All right. Last question, and this came up from a comment we got on Facebook when I put it up that you were coming today. DCOM Green Street says, please ask Prof, is he concerned about the spate of accidents occurring at the highway leading to the main campus? This is clearly in relation to your university.
Oh yes, we are concerned about it. There was even one accident today.
This morning.
Yes, it's in the news.
What's the problem?
Not involving students, you know, but you are on the highway, and it's for the highway authorities, and we are talking to them. We are talking to the police to find ways by which we can slow down vehicles going to Aflao and coming from Aflao. It is just too much, and all this started in the past 10 years when the place started developing, and I think there's not enough police presence checking speed, apart from the toll booths that you come across all over the place. We haven't expressed interest in the speed by which the vehicles have been running, but we are talking to the highway. We are finding ways of coming up with ramps and you know, and so forth, and flashlights and warning signs all over for them to slow down, and not just that, implementing the policy on speed.
All right. Thank you, Prof, for joining us this afternoon. Professor Kwesi Yankah is the Vice Chancellor of the Central University, sharing his thoughts with us on education, especially for the senior high school, and what we need to do to improve quality in Ghana today. At this point, we'll go for another break. We'll come back. There's more for you here. The VGMS has been one of the biggest things that we've been talking about. We'll bring you more on that, plus other stories here on the program. Stay with us.